October 11, 1944. Los Angeles, California. 20-year-old Georgette Bauerdorf spent the afternoon shopping and having lunch with her father's secretary, Rose L. Gilbert. It was a pleasant day. The two said goodbye at about 2 p.m., and Georgette headed home to her apartment in West Hollywood. Less than 12 hours later, she would be dead. This is the story of a brutal murder that shook Hollywood during World War II. A case that remains unsolved to this day. A young heiress killed in her own home with no clear motive and no witnesses willing to come forward. Let's go back to the beginning and piece together what happened that night. Georgette Bauerdorf was the daughter of New York financier George Bauerdorf, a wealthy man with oil and mining interests in Louisiana, Texas, and Nevada. She'd been educated at a convent in Long Island, New York, and later graduated from a girls' school. By all accounts, she came from privilege and lived a comfortable life. In late August 1944, her father, stepmother, and her 21-year-old sister, Constance Bauerdorf Dillon, left for New York. That meant Georgette was now living alone in the family's Los Angeles apartment. She wasn't idle, though. She had purpose. She was a junior hostess at the Hollywood Canteen. The Hollywood Canteen was a special place. Actress Bette Davis, actor John Garfield, and Jules Stein opened the club on October 3, 1942, specifically for servicemen who were in the Hollywood area during the war. Members of Hollywood's professional trades helped convert a former barn on Cahuenga Boulevard, just off the Sunset Strip, into the club. Young women volunteered as junior hostesses to dance with the servicemen and make them feel welcome. It was there, on the evening of June 13, 1944, that Georgette met Private Jerome M. Brown. He was an anti-aircraft artillery trainee from Chicago, stationed at Camp Callan, California. They hit it off. Brown left California soon afterwards and arrived at Fort Bliss in Texas on June 29th. But the two stayed in touch. They wrote letters to each other, and Brown received 6 letters from Georgette in the months that followed. 4 months after they first met, Georgette cashed a check for $175. She used $90 of it to buy an airline ticket to El Paso, Texas. She was planning to attend Brown's graduation from Army school. She told close friends that she was going to meet her soldier boyfriend. The trip was set for October 14, 1944, but she never made it. Hours after her lunch with Rose Gilbert on October 11th, Georgette left her apartment and went to the Hollywood Canteen for her shift as a junior hostess. Her job was to dance with the soldiers and make them feel at home. But that evening, something unusual happened. One particular man kept cutting in on nearly every dance she had. June Ziegler, a 20-year-old friend and fellow hostess, later described the man as swarthy. He was persistent. He wanted to jitterbug with Georgette, a dance style she had little interest in, but he wouldn't take no for an answer. He kept cutting in, over and over again. It was strange behavior, even for a crowded club full of eager servicemen. Georgette danced at the club until about 11:15 p.m. Then she left and returned home alone. Once inside her apartment, she headed to the kitchen. She was hungry. She pulled out cutlery and dishes, cracked open a can of string beans, and polished off her midnight snack with half a cantaloupe. Janitor Fred Atwood lived in the building. He woke up to the sound of a woman's heels clicking back and forth on Georgette's kitchen floor. He heard a crash, as though someone had dropped a tray. Then he went back to sleep. Georgette tossed the empty can and melon rinds into the kitchen wastebasket, washed her dishes, and went upstairs to the bedroom to get ready for bed. Everything seemed normal. Just another night. But at about 2:30 a.m., a neighbor woke up to something terrible. Anguished screams for help pierced the quiet night. He sat bolt upright in bed and listened. He heard Georgette yell, "Stop! Stop! You're killing me!" The screams were desperate, frantic. Then they seemed to quiet down. Suddenly it went silent. The neighbor sat there in the darkness listening. He was sleepy. He convinced himself it was just a family squabble, nothing serious. So he went back to sleep without investigating. He didn't call the police. He didn't go check. He just went back to sleep. The next morning, janitor Fred Atwood and his wife Paula were making their rounds, cleaning tenants' apartments at the upscale building that was home to some celebrities. They arrived at Georgette's door at 11:10 a.m. and entered her apartment using their key. It was quiet inside. Too quiet. Moments later, they found her nearly nude body lying face down in the bathtub. The couple immediately called the police. When officers arrived on the scene, they began searching the apartment for clues about who killed Georgette and why. What they found was puzzling. The place was a mess, with clothing and many of her personal possessions scattered around the apartment. But here's the strange part. Nothing appeared to have been stolen. There was jewelry sitting right there on the dresser, along with her plane ticket to Texas. A large roll of $2 bills and sterling silver worth thousands of dollars lay in plain view in an open trunk. If this was a robbery, the killer had missed some very obvious targets. So what was the motive? Police found bloodstains on a rug in the bedroom adjoining the bathroom. Someone had apparently tried to clean them up. Georgette had a bloody nose, and police initially thought that this could account for the bloodstains. Inspector William J. Penpraise of the Sheriff's Department took charge of the investigation. His preliminary assessment was that she'd been knocked unconscious after falling and then drowned in the bathtub. An autopsy the following day told a different story. Dr. Frank R. Webb, the chief county autopsy surgeon, reported that Georgette had been raped. She was then suffocated when someone forced a piece of folded washcloth down her throat. There was clear evidence that she had fought and struggled against her attacker. This was no accident. This was murder. The knuckles of her right hand were smashed and bruised. There was a bruise on the right side of her head that could have been caused by being punched. Another bruise appeared on her abdomen. Her right thigh bore the bruised imprint of a hand, even showing fingernail marks that had pierced the skin. She'd fought hard. Dr. Webb fixed the time of death at between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m., which lined up perfectly with the neighbor hearing her screaming and pleading for her life at 2:30 a.m. Police found more clues that pointed to foul play. The automatic nightlight over the outside entrance of her apartment had been deliberately tampered with. Someone had unscrewed it just enough to turn it off permanently without using a switch. This wasn't an accident. The killer wanted the entrance dark. Why would someone do that? Investigators believed it was either to prevent Georgette from seeing who was at her door or to shield the killer's identity when he left. Since the light was nearly 8 feet off the floor, the assailant likely stood on a chair or another piece of furniture to reach it. He went to considerable effort to make sure the front of her apartment stayed dark. Police found fingerprints on the light bulb. Based on the evidence, investigators believe that Georgette's killer either used a key to enter her apartment or he waited downstairs until she got ready for bed. Then he rang the doorbell, lured her to the door, and overpowered her once he was inside. Although her body showed clear signs of trying to fight off her attacker, there was nothing inside the apartment indicating any major struggle. No overturned furniture, no broken items, just those bloodstains someone tried to clean up. After leaving her body in the bathtub, Georgette's killer took nearly $100 from her purse. Then he grabbed her car keys and fled. The 1936 model coupe, registered in her sister Connie's name, had been taken from the apartment building's garage. Police found it the following day in the southern part of Los Angeles, 12 miles from her fashionable West Hollywood home. The killer had ditched it when it ran out of gas. In their bid to find the killer, police experts dusted Georgette's apartment for fingerprints. They also processed the car and the light bulb that had been tampered with. They were looking for prints from all 3 locations that matched. But the only matching fingerprints they found belonged to the victim herself. Dead end number 1. They hoped that the piece of worn towel jammed halfway down Georgette's throat might yield some clues. It had stripes, which could potentially be traced back to a specific manufacturer or supplier. But when they contacted laundries, hotels, and apartment supply companies, they came up empty. Dead end number 2. Investigators interviewed 135 junior hostesses and other workers at the Hollywood Canteen in their quest for clues. June Ziegler told them about the persistent dance partner who had been at the club just a few hours before Georgette was killed. He was the jitterbug soldier who wouldn't leave her alone. But no one could provide them with a name or any useful identifying information. Police checked USO centers and other canteens trying to find him. Deputies R.T. Hopkinson and Joe Dennis even staked out the Hollywood Canteen on the night of October 14, 1944, hoping to spot the man and question him. But he never showed up, or if he did, no one recognized him. Then there was a break. Corporal Cosmo Volpe went to the police voluntarily when he heard they were looking to question someone who danced with Georgette that night. He said he'd recently transferred from New York to Los Angeles. He admitted he'd danced with Georgette the night before her murder, but he had an alibi. He left the canteen at 10 p.m. and went to his base at Lockheed Terminal, where he was checked in at 11:30 p.m. That was too early for him to have been at the victim's apartment at the time of her death. Police also learned from Ziegler about another man. Georgette had dated a 6-foot, 4-inch serviceman several times less than a month before her murder. According to Ziegler, he was crazy about Georgette, but she didn't particularly like him. She finally refused to go out with him anymore. Police wanted to question him. They thought a rejected suitor might have motive, but they hit another dead end and couldn't locate him. Police Captain Gordon Bowers, Lieutenant Garner Brown, and Lieutenant Hopkinson went door to door in the neighborhood, hoping that someone had seen Georgette's murderer and could provide a description. They interviewed workers in the area, but neither the canvassing nor the interviews yielded any new information. A sailor was questioned in Long Beach, but police concluded he wasn't a suspect. Then at the end of December 1944, something unexpected happened. A man named John Sumter walked into the Federal Bureau of Investigation's office in San Francisco and confessed that he had killed Georgette Bauerdorf. The 21-year-old former soldier and Navy seaman claimed that he'd met her on a streetcar and accompanied her to her apartment. According to Sumter's story, he bummed a coffee off her. Then another soldier came for a visit. Sumter said he killed Georgette after the other soldier left. But police quickly discounted his confession. There was no streetcar located within half a mile of her home, and her killer had stolen her car, which didn't fit Sumter's story at all. The FBI looked into Sumter's background. They learned he'd been discharged from the Army for writing bad checks. His family revealed that he'd spent time in a sanitarium for mental health issues. It became clear that this was a false confession, probably from someone seeking attention or dealing with psychological problems. Another dead end. A few days after Georgette's death, her body was placed on a train and sent to New York. She was buried in the family plot in Woodlawn Cemetery on Long Island. Her father, who'd lost his daughter in such a brutal way, had to lay her to rest without knowing who took her life or why. To this day, Georgette Bauerdorf's killer has never been found. The case remains unsolved. We don't know if it was the persistent jitterbug dancer from the Hollywood Canteen. We don't know if it was the rejected serviceman who couldn't accept that she didn't want to see him anymore. We don't know if it was a random intruder who somehow got into her apartment. What we do know is this: someone entered that apartment on the night of October 11th, 1944. Someone who either had a key or convinced Georgette to open the door. Someone who tampered with the outside light to keep the entrance dark. Someone who attacked her, raped her, and suffocated her in her own home. And then that person calmly took money from her purse, stole her car, and disappeared into the night. The Hollywood Canteen continued to operate until November 22, 1945. Just after the war ended, thousands of servicemen passed through its doors. But for Georgette Bauerdorf, her service as a junior hostess would cost her everything. If you have any thoughts on this case or theories about what might have happened, leave them in the comments below. And if you want to hear more unsolved cases like this one, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching.